Welcome back to We Need to Talk, everybody. The window has finally slammed shut. Get in there. So today, for the final time this summer, hopefully, probably not though, because you know, we do need those views. We're going to be talking about transfers. Right, before we get into the main part of the show, I want you to go down into the comments below right now and leave a question for us to answer on Sunday Vibes. The most liked one I'll make sure gets read out at some point in the show, as long as it's not just purely offensive. If it's just hammering us, I'm going to pretend it never existed. Okay, as you can see, the title of today's show then is very simple, isn't it? I'm going to be ranking every single Premier League side's summer transfer business. Now, I was tempted to include some other clubs. You know, PSG, unreal. Barcelona, shit show. Atletico Madrid, pretty decent. But then I thought, I'll leave that to Doogie and the EFD boys. So as you can see, I've come up with 5 really unique and inspired categories here. Unreal, good, average, poor, shambles. Took me ages to come up with them. Alright, we're going to do this in alphabetical order. I've also got transfer marked, loaded up here with all of the moves, just so I don't forget any absolute whiffers. And we're going to start, obviously, with Arsenal Football Club. This one I feel like is going to split opinion. And that's because, personally, despite the fact that Arsenal have overspent on players, I'm making that very clear. Ben White is an overspend. Aaron Ramsdale is an overspend. I don't hate their business, and I think there is something more of a cohesive plan for Arsenal's summer window than there was last year. The average age of these signings, look down this column, 23, 22, 23, 22, 21, 21. Do that math very quickly. It's an average age of 22. If you go back to last year when they were bringing in the likes of bloody Willian and Cedric Suarez and players like that, the average age was like 28. So at least they're targeting younger players that can improve in the future. Now, not all of those players are going to have a huge immediate impact on the team. Nuno Tavares, I think, is probably come in as a backup. Ramsdale might start as a backup. Tomiyasu may well be a backup. I think Martin Odegaard is a great bit of business at, 30-odd million quid. Ben White, as I said, is an overspend. Lokonga at 21 looks like a really good young prospect. However, I am going to have to knock them down categories here because their outgoings were an absolute shambles. To only get cash for Joe Willock in that squad is not good enough. The loans were awful. Granit Xhaka they tried to flog all summer, ended up giving him a new contract. Now that's going to have to drop them down, I'm afraid. So I might well have had them in good for those incomings. I don't hate them, as I've just explained, and those are the reasons why. But the outgoings were just a catastrophe. A catastrophe. So I'm going to have to drop them down to average. I feel like they should be about 2.5 between good and average, but I'm going to put them in average. Moving on to Aston Villa, and look, they couldn't do anything about this Jack Grealish move, could they? Jack Grealish wanted to go. He had a clause in his contract. Man City are the best team in England, other than maybe Chelsea at the moment. So they couldn't do anything about it. Have they been able to cope with losing Jack Grealish? They got a great fee for him, £100 million. They've brought in a fantastic creator in Buendia, a really exciting talent in Leon Bailey, who's 24, about to hit his prime years, finally coming to the Prem. And an experienced, if Pato might argue, slight overpayment on Danny Ings, who's going to come in and guarantee you goals if he's fit. So I think this has been a good window for Villa. It would have been unreal if they'd have kept Grealish. Obviously, that wasn't to be. They tried their best. I would have them again, like 1.5, I think, between unreal and good. No, I'm going to put them in good just because they couldn't keep Grealish, even though it wasn't really their fault, was it? Moving on to Brentford then, we can see their business here. Christoph Ayer, obviously their big transfer at 14 million, going to come in and he's going to play a key part in that system. As Chris Amwell said it on Sunday Vibes, surprised Leicester didn't go for Christoph Ayer instead of going for Yannick Vestergaard. Similar sort of fee, and I would much rather a 23-year-old Christoph Ayer, I think, on Onyeka. And Visser certainly seems like an exciting player as well. However, do I think it's enough to keep him in the division? It's going to be tight, isn't it? It is going to be tight. It's a small amount of business, but with Brentford's recruitment process, I do tend to trust it. I really like their data-led recruitment. I like the idea behind a lot of it. I like the links to Midland and the sort of analysis they're putting into transfers. I just think they probably needed a couple more Poor's harsh. Again, this is like a 3.5 for me. I think poor is harsh, but I suppose only 3 signings when you're coming from the Championship to the Premier League. At least they kept hold of Ivan Toney. 3.5. I've put each of these one down when I've had them in the middle, haven't I? So I'm going to put them in tier 4. That's harsh, though, I think. Brighton are up next then. They had an interesting summer. Obviously sold Ben White for £50 million. An unbelievable fee, that. And it's been able to fund all of their summer recruitment business. And Wepo is a very exciting talent coming out of the Red Bull sort of system. I'm really excited to see him in the Premier League. I think Mark Correa is an interesting one. I guess he's going to come in as that sort of left wing back role. What that means for Solly March, his future, maybe he shifts position. I'm not too sure. Brighton fans, let me know where Solly March is going to play now that Cucurella has come in. Yeah, I think this has been a pretty good window. I don't think it's been as good as Villa's. I would have it more like average. I think the biggest move for them is the fact that they didn't lose Graham Potter and didn't lose Yves Bissouma. The fact that they've been able to keep hold of those two is incredible. It's almost good, isn't it? Again, it's like a 2.5, I'd say. I'll stick him in average. Burnley are up next, and I cannot believe they got the deal for Cornet over the line. That is an incredible one. Flash up the photo of Maxwell Cornet pointing to the Umbro logo by accident instead of the Burnley one, but nevertheless, forget that. The left-hand side for Burnley is suddenly become quite exciting. Dwight McNeil and Cornet, that's pretty, for Sean Dyche, that's pretty out there. I don't know how that's happened. However, there wasn't an awful lot of other business, was there? Obviously, Collins came in at £9 million, and they didn't get the renewals for Tarkowski and me and a number of other players that I'm sure they were desperate to do. Nick Pope as well. Of course, Tarkowski and me's contracts are up next summer in 2022. The fact they didn't get those contracts, I think, is really poor business. And is Nathan Collins going to be able to cover for them? I'm not sure. So I'm going to put Burnley. Do you know what? Just because the Cornet signing I think is funny, I'm going to put them up into tier 4. They could have been tier 5 though. Chelsea are up next. I have to put them in unreal, man. Like, the Lukaku move is just so sensational. He's just going to score so many goals for them. I think the Saul Niguez deal, not the most needed, but why not? You've got the money in terms of wages. €5 million is absolute chump change to Chelsea. And the reason that I definitely think they should be in unreal is the outgoings have been sensational. The fees they're getting for these sort of backup talents is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Like, if we go on to Transfermarkt here, have a look at Chelsea's outgoings this summer. Tammy, 36. Kurt, 31. Fikayo Tomori, 26. Zappacosta, 8. Victor Moses, 4. Like, these 3 players they've got nearly 90 million for in Fikayo Tomori, Kurt Zouma and Tammy Abraham. They're backup players in this Chelsea system. To even get 5 million for Victor Moses is fantastic business. 8 million for Zappacosta. A total incoming of £110 million. It's just brilliant business by Marina Granovskaya, and you've got to take your hat off at this stage. Fully deserved to be in tier 1 in my opinion. Crystal Palace are an interesting one because not convinced yet about Patrick Vieira, but if you just look at the business they've done in terms of replacing outgoing aging players with young prospects, on the surface of it, it looks class. Mark Guehi was on loan from Chelsea last season to Swansea, was absolutely monstrous, probably the best, if not one of the best centre-backs in the league. Picking him up for 20-odd million is really smart business when you've got Scott Dan and Gary Cahill leaving the club to partner him with Joachim Andersen, who was very good for Fulham last year in the Premier League, is exceptional. Michael Elise, £8 million is unbelievable. And then to top it off with Odsonne Edouard up front, who we kind of felt should have been going to a Leicester level side. He's almost miraculous. And I know he was in 1 year left on his contract, so £15 million, some might say, is a fair fee. I think this is brilliant business all round from Palace. They've drastically reduced the average age of that squad. I also forget they got Conor Gallagher in on loan. The goal he scored at the weekend against West Ham, where he Cruyff turns with his left and finishes with his right. I thought he was so impressive last season at West Brom. Will Hughes adds... Mate, Crystal Palace have had a 1.5 here. Crystal Palace have had a 1.5. I think they've had such a good window based on what they could do. I'm still not convinced about Patrick Vieira, but yeah, they're going in the good category. Everton are up next, and they've obviously had huge financial restraints placed on them. I mean, they have spent, I think, net the 5th most in the Premier League over the last 5 years, which is an awful lot of money. I think they've got a net spend of like minus £233 million across that period. Obviously, this summer, I think it was like 2 million quid, something like that. And you know what? I think Damari Gray is going to be really good for Everton this season. He started the season so well, and he is just going to get to the byline, put balls in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Rondon, whilst not being flashy, is fine backup cover when Moise Kean's gone to Juventus for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because we know Rafa's going to cross the ball, Rondon's going to edit, Calvert-Lewin's going to edit, but do I think overall Everton fans will be happy with the £1.8 million they've spent? No. I mean, it just is a tier 5 window, isn't it? Really, on paper, it is a pretty shambolic window. I still think Rafa Benitez is going to do a really good job for Everton. Despite the fact he's a Liverpool legend, he's almost a perfect fit for a club like Everton. So they'll probably finish in the top half-ish. But the business, it's just ugly, isn't it? Leeds United are up next then. They spent 50 odd million pounds in the end, was it? Let's have a quick reminder of how much Leeds did spend. Yeah, 53 million pounds. Obviously 26 million of that going on Dan James. I still don't think that's quite the record signing for Leeds, but it's pretty damn close if not. And let me give my opinion on this, because I saw him placed in the 10 players that could flop from Football Daily, and I couldn't disagree more. I think Dan James is going to be a really good player for Leeds. Yes, he might not have had the technical ability for Manchester United to break down low block defences, but he's extremely tactically versatile. He works incredibly hard, which is exactly what Bielsa wants out of his forwards and out of his midfielders. And let's not forget, he is an absolute speed demon. So on transition for this Leeds side, he's almost perfect. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits and rotates with Jack Harrison and Rafinha. But I think this is a very good signing. Maybe 5 million too much, but a very good signing. Junior Firpo, an interesting one. Jack Harrison, a great signing to get that permanent deal done at £11 million, although I think it was an obligation after that loan. Not many outgoings. I think overall, if I was giving Leeds a ranking, I'd say average. Don't think they've progressed loads, but I'm excited to see him again this season. Leicester City up next. They spent £60 million, of course, this summer. I do like the signing of Daka. His record for Red Bull Salzburg absolutely stinking. I think it was 26 and 27 last year. I think it was 24 and 31 the year before that. He is going to have an impact on this Leicester team, despite the fact it might take him a little bit of time to gel into it. And I think the arrival of Adelola Lookman is a very smart bit of business before we even come on to the midfield additions of like Boubakary Samare, who is going to add depth in there. Not overly convinced about Vestergaard. I think that's a bit of a weird one, but they needed centre-backs, didn't they? And I still think they should have gone for Christophe Ayer. I think because they didn't lose Ndidi and because they didn't lose Maddison, and they did spend smart, Daka smart, Samare smart, Lookman on loan is smart, I will put them in tier 2. I don't think it's been unreal. I don't think it's been average. It's been good. Liverpool up next. Then only really one major incoming in Konate at £36 million, and that was his buyout clause, wasn't it? But they did get a lot of contracts done. And I know that they are being sort of memed as Contract FC on Twitter, but some of these players are exceptional talents and they've managed to lock them down in the long term. I still think Liverpool fans would have wanted another forward. I still think the loss of Gini Wijnaldum, who plays pretty much every minute of every game last season, is a big one. So I am going to say it's been a poor summer. Because they didn't get that additional forward, because they haven't yet given Salah a contract, although I'm sure that will probably be announced over the coming weeks, I think the Liverpool fans wanted more. So yeah, poor. Manchester City up next. I mean, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because this could swing both ways, really. On one hand, getting Jack Grealish right up there with the best moves this summer, isn't it? It's a lot of money, but he's a fabulous creator, and we still haven't seen him and KDB really in the same side for 90 minutes. I cannot wait to see it. However, they chased Harry Kane all summer. They didn't get Harry Kane. They didn't get a striker to replace the outgoing Sergio Aguero. But even then, they top scored last season by 10 goals. Pep Guardiola's sides have classically always scored bucket loads of goals. They got to a Champions League final without a striker. They won the Premier League title without a striker. I do think they're going to be under much more significant pressure from Chelsea this year. I mean, overall, the signing of Grealish just does jump them from like a tier 4 to a tier 3, I think. But without getting Kane, they can't be any higher. I'm sorry. Didn't get a left back in either, did they? Nuno Mendes went to PSG. I think it was like a €7 million loan to start with, and then the option to make it permanent for €40 million. So Man City, like a 3.5 average. Manchester United are up next then, and there's two ways of looking at this, isn't there? If you'd have offered me Manchester United signing Sancho, Varane, Ronaldo at the start of summer, I'm off my chair. Fell off my chair, passed out, A&E, blood loss. Honestly, insane. However, didn't get a defensive midfielder, which was probably one of the key positions for United to strengthen this summer. Fred and Scott McTominay in there. Outgoings weren't great. Couldn't shed Jesse Lingard. Couldn't shed Phil Jones. Pereira only going on loan. I think it's like a 1.5. Ronaldo, though. It's just Ronaldo. It's the most romantic move I can possibly think of. It's the best centre-back United could possibly get. It's the best young wide talent in the world. How can you say it's not tier 1? Why? Because they didn't sign one defensive midfielder. I still think that's a tier 1 summer. I'm sorry. It's incredible. Newcastle are up next then. Oof. 25 million on Joe Willock. I do think Joe Willock's a good player. However, is he warranting spending your entire summer budget on, as Steve Bruce said, that they broke all rules around the budget, that they've had to start paying it in installments, they haven't been able to get anybody else in? I think that's a huge risk, and it's huge pressure on Joe Willock. I just think they needed more players than one. I like Joe Willock, but people think I've got an anti-Newcastle agenda. I really don't, but I just think they should have signed more players. And obviously, that's the owner's fault entirely. I completely get that. I'm just going to double check. I'm not missing anyone. They didn't sign anyone else, did they? Santiago Munoz, Mexican. This is a joke, isn't it? Because isn't this the guy from Goal? Wow, they've actually signed the guy from Goal on an 18-month loan deal. So, what was his name on Goal? Santiago. What was his name on Goal? It was Santiago Munez, not Munoz. We're living in a f***ing simulation here. Is this real? What is going on? Newcastle fans brand signing a Mexican striker a PR stunt. This is so Newcastle. Norwich are up next then. They did 59 million worth of business, did they, in the end? 60 million worth of business? Yeah, 59 million worth of business. And it is quite varied. I still don't think they've got the cover of Buendia. Obviously, his huge chance creation numbers, his huge goal and assist numbers being lost from this side is a hammer blow. Jesus, what's the matter with me? They've obviously spread their bets, haven't they? They've signed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sort of 12 players to cover a number of different positions. I like the loan signings of Brandon Williams and Billy Gilmore. I quite like the loan signing of Ozan Kabak as well. I think that's a bit of a coup, to be honest with you. The other signings, I think, are smart as well, because even if Norwich get relegated and these players aren't able to keep them in the division, look at these ages, 19, 21, 25. They should be able to either shift them on or they'll have a serious impact for them in the Championship. Players like Milo Rashica and Josh Sargent, Ben Gibson, proven down there. Giannoulis, I know that Norwich fans really, really like him already. So I think it's not been as bad as some people would have you believe, but it's still poor because of the Buendia move. They just couldn't do anything about it though, could they? Like, they've tried their best, Norwich. It's probably just not going to be enough. You know, if I could redo my predictions, I'd swap Brentford and Norwich around. C'est la vie. They're going in poor. As for Southampton, then I was extremely worried. Bertrand, Ings, Vestergaard, 3 key players for the Southampton side being let go of. But I think they've done some quite smart business, and I can see why Ralph Hasenhüttl is fairly happy with his well-rounded squad. They've gone back to the old Southampton way. They're targeting young players. Look at the average ages of some of these signings. You know, Livramento, 18. He looks an unbelievable player. I know that a lot of Chelsea fans kept on saying he's our best academy talent. He looks fantastic. I really wasn't sure he'd start straight away, but moving Kyle Walker-Peters into that left wing-back slot seems pretty smart as well. Thierry Small, hugely rated talent out of Everton. Broja coming again out of Chelsea's academy too. Perrault, of course, still only 23. Lycano, 24. Adam Armstrong at 24, the highest non-penalty expected goals of any player in the Championship. Forget the Theo Walcott move. I think overall the squad hasn't necessarily been improved, but they've been smart. They've gone to stay in the division and then get better. A little bit old Southampton style. You know, it's been okay. It's been okay, and I think they're going to be all right now. Moving on to Tottenham Hotspur then, looking at their business, you know, Emerson Royale, when he signed for Barcelona, I remember seeing the Laporta quote with the €300 million buyout clause, saying he's going to be very stable. A lot of people have compared him to Maicon that I've spoken to. I think that's slightly over the top, but you know, they've got rid of Serge Aurier, who has been a catastrophe at the club, and bought him in. They've obviously got Brian Hill as part of that swap deal with Eric Lamela. That seems like quite smart business. They've kept Harry Kane as well. They've got Son down to a new contract. Romero's come in from being the best defender in Serie A, if slightly different to how Tottenham want to play. You know, he's quite an active centre-back, and Nuno wants to sit quite deep, doesn't he? They've got rid of Sissoko. I think this has been an alright summer for Tottenham. I don't think it's been tier 1, but I think it's been tier 2. I think Spurs fans will be pretty happy once Harry Kane comes back fully and everything is forgotten there. Moving on to Watford now then. I'm just having a look at their summer again. A little bit like Norwich, they've spread their bets heavy, haven't they? They've brought in a lot of players this summer. Really like the look of Emmanuel Dennis so far. I think Moussa Sissoko, as much of a meme as he is, I think he's actually going to be really good. Really good for Watford. I think Tufan looked okay at stages last season. Danny Rose, probably not going to rip up any trees at this age. But overall, I think Watford's incomings, a little bit like Norwich, even if they go down, will be very good for them in the Championship, or they'll turn a significant profit on them. Look at Luz's age. Look at Emmanuel Dennis's age. Ismaila Sarr's still at the club. They managed to keep hold of him. If I had Norwich in port, I'm going to put Watford in the exact same category as Norwich. I think it's a very similar window. Moving on to West Ham then. I'm just looking at their business now. I would be really happy if I was a West Ham fan. Yes, you didn't get the backup striker you're potentially asking for, but Kurt Zouma, I'm impressed by that bit of business. It's an overpayment at £31 million. However, he is a really good defender. Don't think he's quite good enough on the ball for a club like Chelsea, but backs to the wall stuff, he is very, very good. Vlasic, I'm excited to see him come in from CSK Moscow. Obviously, they couldn't get the deal done for Jesse Lingard, so turned to the younger option in Vlasic. Alex Kral, don't know loads about him. Again, another signing coming out of Eastern Europe, and they've had huge success with players like Souček, with players like Kufau recently. Craig Dawson they managed to make permanent. Alphonse Areola, I think, is an upgrade on Fabianski, and came in at, a loan fee with an option to buy. So overall, I think West Ham have had a great summer, especially with keeping hold of Declan Rice. Forget the Jesse Lingard deal because they got the Vlasic one over the line. I think this is like a solid 2. A very good window for West Ham. Moving on to Wolves then, and I actually think they've done pretty good business for very low cost. Hee-Chan Huang coming in from Leipzig on loan offers cover in multiple areas across that front line, especially given that Pedro Neto has had that knee setback out until November. Trinquao coming in on loan. Again, I think Barcelona are spending 50% of his wages, and the loan option to buy at the end of the summer is still only like 30 odd million, 25 million. That's good business. They managed to keep hold of Neto. They managed to keep hold of Traore. They kept hold of Ruben Neves. I think it's fine. That's fine. No major outgoings. Some pretty smart incomings. I think that's in and around tier 3, isn't it? Okay, so that was my tier list of every single club in the Premier League summer transfer window. Did you agree with me? Did you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. I'm very interested to hear what you've got to say. Also, leave us a comment for all Sunday Vibes. When you're down there, please hit that like button because it really does help us out. Thanks very much for watching. See you later. Bye.